I stood there staring at the tall metal fence that now completely circled my ranch. A private HOA property, no trespassing sign hung right in the middle of the locked gate. I blinked. My own ranch, fenced, locked like I was the trespasser. I rattled the gate hard. It didn't budge. I had left for just 2 days to visit my mother in Houston. 2 days. Dust swirled in the Texas wind as I leaned against the post and stared at the iron insult someone had built while I was gone. The land stretched wide and golden behind it, hundreds of acres of mesquite, cedar, and grass that had been mine since my daddy left it to me. My name was still on the deed. My cattle brand burned into every fence post. And now it was fenced off under a stranger's sign. I'm Jesse Ray, retired firefighter, 45 years old. The kind of man who prefers quiet mornings, black coffee, and the sound of wind pushing through dry grass. I thought I'd left the fight behind when I hung up my turnout coat. Turns out the fire just found me again, this time with suits and paperwork instead of smoke and flame. I pulled my truck up close to the gate and looked around. The new posts were steel, galvanized, straight as soldiers, bolted deep. Whoever did this worked fast and meant business. There was a number on the sign for Community Management LLC. I called it. A cheerful voice answered. Cedar Ridge Homeowners Association, this is Kelly. Yeah, Kelly, I said. This is Jesse Ray. You got a problem. You fenced in my ranch. I'm sorry, sir, could you repeat that? I'm standing on County Road 17 looking at my own property behind your shiny new fence. There was a pause long enough to tell me she was reading something on a screen. Then came the practiced tone people use when they think you're mistaken. According to our records, that land is part of the Cedar Ridge community. All parcels have been incorporated under the HOA charter effective last month. Ma'am, that land's been Ray Ranch since 1953. I understand, sir, but perhaps you should contact our legal department. Have a great day. The line clicked dead. I stood there a minute, the hum of locusts filling the silence. My jaw tightened. I'd fought fires that tried to eat whole neighborhoods, seen men fall through burning roofs, but this kind of quiet theft, wrapped in politeness and ink, felt worse. I drove back into town. The courthouse clerk knew me, she'd gone to school with my sister. Together we pulled the property records. Sure enough, something had changed, an amended plat filed while I was gone. Someone had redrawn the map lines, merging my land into a development district. The signature at the bottom wasn't mine. That's when I met the name Thomas Reeves, head of Cedar Ridge HOA. A developer with slick hair, starched cuffs, and the smile of a man who thinks the law is his leash. When I showed up at their temporary office, an air-conditioned trailer planted on what used to be my neighbor's pasture, Reeves acted surprised to see me. Mr. Ray. Always good to meet a legacy landowner. We were hoping to bring you into the community plan. Bring me in? I repeated. You built a fence through my pasture. He waved it off. A simple misunderstanding. The county approved a boundary adjustment, purely administrative. We're modernizing the area. New roads, fiber, security, value appreciation. I didn't sell, I said flatly. Reeves smiled the way snakes do before striking. Paperwork sometimes moves faster than people, Mr. Ray, but you'll be compensated. Fairly. I don't want your money. I want my gate open. That's when his tone cooled. You might want to review the HOA's easement clauses. Trespassing on Cedar Ridge property could result in legal action. He dismissed me like an errand. I left before I broke his jaw. For the next week I dug. County meetings, land records, neighbor visits. Turns out half the folks along the ridge had been pressured into voluntary annexation. Legal talk for sign here or get sued. Old Martha Jennings lost her water rights. The Hernandez family got fined for their tractor being non-compliant with community standards. They were building a kingdom one signature at a time. I spent nights at my kitchen table with coffee gone cold, reading statutes until my eyes burned. Then I found something, the original deed from my father, registered decades before the county ever recognized a homeowner's district. It included a permanent agricultural exemption and a clause saying no restrictive covenant could override the homestead rights. Ironclad. Next morning I rolled up to the gate again, bolt cutters in hand. The sun was barely up, turning the sky orange over the cedar line. I clipped the chain, swung the gate open and drove through. 2 hours later, Sheriff Dalton showed up. Good man, but politics had his leash too. Jess, you can't be cutting HOA property. Sheriff, this is my property. I handed him the deed copy. He read it slow, scratched his chin. Looks like you've got a case. But I'm getting calls from the county board already. Maybe let the courts handle it. Courts move slower than drought, I muttered. That night, the power to my house flickered and died. Next morning, I found the line had been cut where it crossed the fence. Someone had spray-painted Outlaw Ranch on my mailbox. That was when I stopped playing nice. I put up cameras, floodlights, and a few of my old firefighter buddies came by to help. We were the kind of men who'd learned patience inside burning houses. We knew how to plan. I started digging into Reeves' company. Turned out he'd filed multiple LLCs under different names, transferring assets between them to hide debt. Worse, he'd bribed a zoning officer. There were emails, contracts, even a scanned receipt for a consulting fee. One night I drove down to the community meeting they were holding at the model home. 50 residents packed inside, drinking lemonade and talking about property values. I waited till Reeves stepped up to the mic, smiling for the crowd. Then I walked in. "Evenin', neighbors," I said. "Name's Jesse Ray. Some of you know me as the man they fenced out of his own land." Murmurs spread. Reeves froze. I tossed a stack of printed emails onto the podium. "These papers show your president here's been forging plats and bribing county officials. He's not building a community, he's stealing one." Someone gasped. Another filmed on their phone. Reeves tried to laugh it off. "These accusations are absurd. Tell that to the Attorney General," I cut in. "They'll be getting this folder tomorrow morning." I left before anyone could stop me. The next day the story hit local news. Retired firefighter exposes HOA corruption. Cameras rolled at my fence line. Support poured in from ranchers across the county. Reeves wasn't done though. That evening I found tire tracks leading to my barn. Inside, broken windows, feet scattered, my radio smashed. They wanted to scare me. I sat on the porch till sunrise, shotgun across my knees, waiting. They didn't come back, but lawyers did. Cease and desist letters. Threats. I sent every one back unopened, stapled to a copy of my deed. Weeks turned to months. Investigations crawled forward. But I kept fighting, at town halls, in the papers, online. The HOA tried to fine me $1,000 a day for non-compliance. I mailed them an invoice for trespassing on Ray land, $1 million due immediately. By fall the tide turned. The county prosecutor pressed charges on the zoning officer. Reeves' companies got frozen. The fence came down under court order. But the battle had changed me. I wasn't the quiet rancher anymore. Every nail, every post I rebuilt carried a lesson. Stand your ground even when the law forgets which side it's on. When the last section of metal clanged down and the wind rolled free through my pasture again, I could finally breathe. Freedom doesn't come in papers or speeches. It comes from the will to fight when the world calls you stubborn. And out here, stubborn is just another word for alive. Freedom had returned to my land, but peace hadn't. The headlines had quieted, the court ruled in my favor, yet the people who tried to steal from me still walked free. Reeves lost his company, but men like him never stay down for long. Rumor had it he was regrouping under a new name, trying to buy back into the next county over. I sat on my porch, watching the sunset paint the ridge in gold, when the thought hit me clear as a church bell. If the law couldn't finish this, I would. I wasn't talking violence. I'd seen enough fire and blood to know that only fools burn what they can outthink. I wanted justice, the kind that sticks. So I started digging again. This time deeper. A friend from my firefighting days, Eddie Tran, now a data security contractor, helped me track where Reeves had funneled his money. Offshore accounts, shell LLCs, fake land trusts. All the same tricks wrapped in new names. "Man's dirty down to the soul," Eddie said, scrolling through files. "But if you want him exposed, you'll need more than paperwork. You'll need people." That's when I realized something. The HOA had hurt more than just me. Old Martha Jennings lost her home to foreclosure because of fake maintenance fines. The Hernandez family still had liens on their tractor. And half the residents of Cedar Ridge were paying double property taxes thanks to Reeves' fraudulent filings. I made some calls. Knocked on doors. Sat at kitchen tables. I told them what I knew. At first, folks were scared, afraid to fight the machine that ran their lives. But I showed them the proof. Copies of Reeves' forged plats, signed affidavits, and the hidden accounts Eddie had uncovered. When they saw how deep the lie went, something shifted. Fear turned into fury. We formed a coalition, the Ridge Freeholders. 12 families, one mission: take back what was stolen. While Reeves planned his next development under a new name, we filed a class action suit with our own lawyer. A real bulldog of a woman named Carla Winston, former state prosecutor, the kind who smelled corruption like smoke. Carla didn't just go after Reeves. She went after the county officials who'd signed the illegal plats, the banks who'd financed them, and the insurance companies who'd looked the other way. When the subpoenas hit, the local news lit up again. The HOA board resigned overnight. Reeves vanished from public view. But I wasn't done. One night, I drove out to the old model home that used to be the HOA office. It was dark now, abandoned. I walked around back, boots crunching on gravel, and found something half buried in the dirt, a rusted metal box. Inside were flash drives, receipts, and ledgers. Everything they hadn't destroyed when they ran. I turned the evidence over to Carla. Within weeks, the state attorney filed new charges: racketeering, fraud, falsifying land records. When Reeves was finally arrested, cameras caught him in handcuffs outside a hotel in Dallas. The man who once threatened to fine me for my own fence now faced 20 years in prison. But the best part wasn't revenge, it was what came after. The Ridge freeholders bought back the land the HOA had taken. We turned it into a cooperative. No board, no hidden fees, just neighbors looking out for each other. The kids painted a new sign that read, "Welcome to Cedar Ridge, no trespassing on freedom." A year later, the fence that once caged me stood melted down in my barnyard. I turned the steel into a sculpture, half horse, half flame, to remind me what happens when people stand together. As for me, I still get letters from across the country. Ranchers, veterans, old folks tired of being bullied by money and paper. They all say the same thing: "You gave us courage to fight back." I smile every time I read one. Because this fight was never just about a ranch. It was about what a man does when the world tells him he's beaten. And if there's one thing I learned fighting both fire and greed, it's this: the moment you stop being scared of losing, you've already won. The days after the court wind felt strange. The land was quiet, the wind finally sounded like wind again, and yet I couldn't shake the feeling that something unfinished still lingered. The HOA had been exposed, sure, but men like Donald Reeves didn't disappear. They regrouped. I wasn't a man who enjoyed revenge, but I believed in balance. And the scales were still uneven. At night, I sat on my porch with Ranger at my feet, thinking of all the people they'd wronged: families fined into debt, widows threatened over mailbox colors, veterans forced out of their homes by false liens. The HOA wasn't just a group of bullies, it was a system built on fear. And that meant if I wanted this to end, I had to make sure it could never rise again. I called Travis, my lawyer, and told him I wanted to dig deeper. He smiled that fox-like grin of his and said, "You know, Jesse, the thing about men who hide behind paperwork, they always leave a paper trail." And he was right. Over the next few weeks, we started uncovering a web of forged signatures, phony permits, and secret land transfers. Turns out, the HOA had been laundering money through dummy companies that managed neighborhood improvements, companies owned by Reeves and his partners. The more we found, the uglier it got. One night, while going through a stack of old county records, I found something that made my blood run cold. The HOA hadn't just wanted my ranch. They'd planned to buy up the entire ridge, build luxury homes, and rename the whole area Pine Haven Estates. My land was supposed to be their crown jewel, a private lake community for people who'd never even touched a shovel. I felt that fire return in my chest, the same one that got me through burning buildings. I wasn't just going to defend my land anymore. I was going to reclaim every inch they'd stolen from anyone. So I started knocking on doors. The Smiths, who lost their well rights. The Hernandez family, fined for unauthorized livestock. Even old Mrs. Lang, whose garden had been bulldozed after she refused to pay a late fee. Every single one of them had a story, and every story pointed back to the same handful of names. We banded together: farmers, retirees, mechanics, even a schoolteacher who'd once been on the HOA board before quitting in disgust. We called ourselves the Ridge Freeholders, and our mission was simple: to take back what was ours with truth and law on our side. Travis filed a class action lawsuit on behalf of all of us. The day those papers hit the courthouse steps, the news exploded again. Cameras rolled. Social media lit up. Folks across the state were watching. And this time the HOA couldn't hide. Their new lawyers quit after seeing the evidence. County officials scrambled to distance themselves. Reeves went silent. Then one evening, a black SUV pulled into my driveway. Out stepped a woman in a gray suit, mid-40s, worn expression, carrying a folder. Her name was Beatrice Langford, former HOA attorney. "I'm done covering for them," she said quietly. "They've crossed too many lines." She handed me a flash drive, emails, internal memos, even instructions to falsify land deeds. Proof of everything. That was the final spark. When the next hearing came, the courthouse was packed. Cameras flashing, people standing shoulder to shoulder. Travis presented every document, every signature, every video. Reeves tried to shout, his face red as the Texas sun, but the judge silenced him. By the end of that day, the verdict was clear. Every claim dismissed, damages awarded to every victim, and criminal charges filed against the entire board. As the deputies led Reeves and his cronies out in handcuffs, I stood in the doorway, hat low, hands in my pockets. The fight was over. The fence that once boxed me in had become their cage. But I wasn't smiling, not yet. Because I still had one more move left to make. The court victory should have been the end. But if there's one thing I learned in life, it's that endings aren't always clean. They're built one nail at a time, just like fences. The HOA was gone, the board behind bars, and Reeves facing years in prison. Yet I still woke before sunrise, restless, pacing the porch with coffee in hand. The land was free, but something in me wasn't. I wanted to turn my anger into something that lasted longer than a headline. Something louder than revenge. That's when I looked out past the ridge at the stretch of dirt road they'd built without permission, the one they thought would lead to their luxury gate. It cut right across the property line I just reclaimed in court. And that's when the idea came to me like thunder in a summer sky. I wasn't going to build a wall. I was going to build a legacy. So I called in every favor I'd earned over the years. Old firefighter buddies, ranch hands, vets from the county post, and even a few high school kids looking for work. Within days, flatbed trucks started rolling in. By dawn that Saturday, the quiet road behind Pine Haven was alive with the sound of engines, drills, and laughter. My neighbors peeked out their windows, expecting another HOA stunt. Instead, they saw wooden beams going up, red and blue banners waving, and a hand-painted sign that read, "Freedom Arena, built by the people for the people." That name stuck. The first night we lit the flood lamps, I could see the glow all the way to town. Folks drove out just to see what I was building. Some laughed, others cried. Most just stood there, taking in the sight of something made not for profit or power, but for pride. By the end of the week, the arena stood finished. Sturdy fences, bleachers from donated lumber, a sound system borrowed from the high school band, and an old flag fluttering above the entry gate. Opening day felt like a county fair. Families showed up in trucks, kids waving, the smell of barbecue drifting through the wind. The same news crew that once filmed my battles was back again, but this time their cameras caught smiles instead of lawsuits. The anchor, Allison Price, walked up to me mid-interview and said, "Mr. Ray, what made you build this?" I grinned. Because when someone tries to fence you in, you build something bigger on the other side. That clip spread faster than wildfire. Within days, Freedom Arena became a symbol for every small-town dreamer tired of being pushed around. Veterans called. Farmers sent letters. Schools reached out to host events. And on weekends the place came alive. Rodeos, charity cookouts, veterans nights, even goat yoga for the kids. The laughter echoed where silence used to sit. The land that once divided us now brought people together. Months later, I got a letter from the new interim HOA president, a young woman named Emily Hart. She wrote, "Dear Mr. Ray, we can't undo what was done, but your arena has done more for this community than any board ever could. Thank you for reminding us what real neighbors look like." I folded the letter and tucked it inside the same drawer that held my court papers. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The cheers from across the ridge were answer enough. That night, as the stars came out and country music played softly from the speakers, I sat on the top rail of the new arena, Ranger at my side, watching the last of the crowd head home. In the distance, the old fence post still stood, weathered and bent, a reminder of what once tried to contain me. I smiled and whispered, "Not anymore." Because in the end, the man they tried to fence in became the one who tore the fence down for everyone else. And that, I figured, was the truest kind of freedom there is.